Welcome everyone. On behalf of the hosting organization, I'm Savina Carluccio, and I'm the Executive Director of the International Coalition for Sustainable Infrastructure, or ICSI. And I'm welcoming you on behalf of the co-hosts, so Bentley Systems, Mahila Housing Trust, and the UN University. So very warm welcome, so no pun intended, we're very warm. And today we are going to have a fun session. This is not a traditional session or panel. We got lots of speakers, so it should be fun and it should be a good discussion. So today's session explores how to develop infrastructure that aligns climate, biodiversity, equity, and development goals. So we want to move from business as usual to doing things differently. And the point of this session, and this is actually how we normally convene, is bringing together many different perspectives. And what best format to do this than a fishbowl. So I'll now hand it over to my co-moderator here, and she will tell you a little bit more about the rules of the game today.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Sane Okamoto, senior researcher from United Nations University. So this session is it's called the fishbowl session. We have asked like 5, 6 the startup speakers, and then they will provide inspiring insights. And then we also have a second the discussant speakers to follow up with more like interactive comment. And it's not like panel speech and so on, but more like interactive dialogues. So please consider when you feel, like you can share like your ideas or insights or your experiences in 2 minutes, really sharp 2 minutes, because we have 16, 17 speakers we could, manage to get on board. So that's please be considerate about other speakers' time. So just stay with 2 minutes. So, do you have anything else to add? Okay. Then we can start fishbowl session, and the first speaker.
All right, great. Thank you, Stanay. And so we'll now start with our speakers that are here on stage. So we'll just go in the order, the people sitting next to me. Please introduce yourself and give us your opening remarks. Thank you.
Imanaja Mashikuna, Nyukashutimi Talia Yanina, Ecuador, Otavalo, Jactamanda. Hello everyone, my name is Talia Cachimuel. I'm Quicho Otavalo from Ecuador. I want to start off by sharing a statistic that many of you may have heard throughout the course of the week, that indigenous peoples protect 80% of the world's biodiversity. And so I speak as an indigenous woman, where my community experiences daily climate impact and practices long-term stewardship of land, water, and ecosystems. And so infrastructure is a relationship between people, nature, and future generations. And these principles align directly with the UNFCCC, and those fall in line under equity, inclusivity, and local-led adaptation. And so throughout the process of co-designing, we must be treated as rights holders and co-architects. We can't be brought in at the end. We have to be at the beginning and throughout every single process, throughout the course of any project or mapping that happens. And so ensuring that we're engaged from the earliest of stages of planning is a form of free, prior, and informed consent. And it's important that we combine indigenous traditional ecological knowledge with climate data and digital tools to enable adaptive and resilient design. It's important to ensure that co-design processes contribute to a just transition and culturally grounded decision-making. And so we must shift from a top-down approach, and locally led stewardship is directly in line with the global goal on adaptation. And we must treat indigenous knowledge as a valid scientific system consistent under the local communities and indigenous peoples platform. Establishing continuous platforms for engagement that link community knowledge and technical standards with climate policy are imperative. And we know that healthy ecosystems strengthen local economies and climate resilient livelihoods. Embedding community leadership and ecological safeguards in policies and finance accelerates resilience. And so I hope that through this, you understand the critical importance of integrating indigenous traditional ecological knowledge into the co-designing process. Yupe Jenny, thank you.
My name is Nidhi Nagabatla. I represent United Nations University, the UN system. We are the UN think tank on implementation of sustainable development goals and all related support to member states. I also represent platform for ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, PEDRR. I encourage you to look at us on the our website. This is a platform, interagency platform that mobilizes ecosystem approach to disaster risk reduction infrastructure design and deployment, discourses on the strengths, the opportunities, and how to mobilize best practices from across regions, across geographical systems, and also socio-cultural, socio-political systems. What are the constraints? Is it technical constraints? And as my role as the program lead on the nature, climate, and health at my institution, we are also supporting this discourse. I also want to make 2 points. Point number 1, the framework, I talked about a platform where you all can join, become members, support with your insights, learn from others, and let others learn from you. PEDRR, that's the name of the platform. Now I'm going to describe the approach, EcoDRR. So ecosystem-based infrastructure design and deployment for disaster risk reduction. These could be fundamental entities like bridges, ports, wastewater management systems. If you just take one example of wastewater management systems, the idea of a wastewater management system treatment plan at any city, community, or municipality is to purify your water for drinking and sanitation. But it could be a multifunctional system for also stormwater management. So we are looking at integration across multifunctionality through an ecosystem DRR approach. So it could also be a wetland. It could also be a community space for people to learn and do experiments. It could have a design which is nature-based solution, but also have multiple functions to the water security needs, to the energy needs, but also to the recreational needs. That's community, that is like connecting with the society, with the people. Why are we doing this? And I quote the city of Sydney that has really done this in a very nice manner. Before designing, it took a public consultation with all its citizens. Do you want a water treatment plant in the center of your city? Yes. We do, but it may give foul smell. But let's make it together as a learning space, and it really did that. And it's now not Sydney City's resilience plan with the eco-DRR functionality, with the nature-based solution, with community consultation. That's where I pause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Talia, thank you for setting us on the indigenous people perspective, and then Nidhi on collaboration, but also the aspect of DRR and so forth. We join with another speaker, and you'll go last, Vijay, if that's okay. I wanted to draw attention to the questions, which I didn't really do at the start. The questions that the starter speakers and the subsequent speakers will relate to is how do we co-design infrastructure with communities and nature? That's why, we're kind of keep on mentioning that. And then why should we care and what must change? So we heard why should we care, what must change. And then, we're now going to hear perspectives from people who are actually doing this and then want to share their experiences. So over to you.
Thank you so much. So my name is Laia Romero. I am the director of Lobelia Earth. I am also a climate scientist and an expert on satellite data. I work with satellite data, and this is mainly a top-down approach, literally. And it doesn't work on its own. We need to work with communities and with the people in the ground to make sense of what we do. So an example of this was in Niger and Burkina Faso. We have been engaged in thousands of hectares of agroforestry activities. There are a new nature-based solution in that area. And we needed to co-design with them a protocol to measure the trees on the ground. With those measurements, we can actually calibrate and adjust the satellite-based imagery. But it's not only a technical solution. Nature-based solutions are a living system. And so you need someone to take care of those systems. And they change from year to year. By co-designing it with a community, you're ensuring a technical quality, and you're ensuring that it will exist for the rest of the time that you need that infrastructure for. So, yeah, this is my remark. Thank you.
Yes, please, yes.
Yeah, so I'm Bijal Brahmbhatt from Mahila Housing Trust, and we work with poor women, and we believe that across India, and we believe that if poor women are given socio-technical skills, they can shape responsible urban development. Okay. And so we are also an ecosystem enabler. We bring the government, the markets, and other civil society organizations to partner with these women. We have been actually doing nature-based solutions on the ground, implementing them with cities. And we found 4 things, how we can make the most vulnerable communities interested. I think there are 3 principles. One is if they don't have access to, say, water, how do you ensure, because access is an issue, and we are talking of higher level, but the poor don't even have water at their doorstep. So one is how can you, through these systems, ensure equitable access. Second is how does it actually protects them from loss and damage. And the third is that how will it build their resilience. So just to give an example of a water program, first of all, we did a water DPR project report for the entire city, but we found that because the poor were given water in 5 days, we revived all the defunct wells and did mini schemes with solarization, water schemes, which would give them water at their doorstep. But at the same time, they also started paying taxes to the municipality so that they could generate it. And we did city level forestry. So at the household level for the poor, it was kitchen gardens to increase their food security. At the city level, it was urban forestry where they were actually engaged in, creating those forests and maintaining them with the city. And therefore, it also earned them a livelihood. And we are now trying to tell our government, because our government has a Rural Employment Act where minimum days of employment are given to these women, but none in urban, which is where the living quality is very bad. So how such initiatives can also be linked with urban wage employment, and that's how these solutions should be designed to reach the most vulnerable and engage them meaningfully.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. So it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to co-host this session with ICSI and you and all of you. So I'm from Bentley Systems. I'm Director of Sustainability, and I will speak as environmental engineer, as a former consultant, and as a citizen and software developer as well. So I feel that there's a huge opportunity to treat technologies, community knowledge, and biodiversity as equal inputs. And if we do that, immediately we can see resilience coming up. Can give you some examples. Cities that restore wetlands, mangroves, and green corridors, they improve flood protection, and they can reduce costs by that if they test it with models, with digital twins. They can indeed reduce costs by doing that, because they can make multiple scenarios, they can check it, they can quantify, they can see and fix all that thing. The same with water utilities. Water utilities, they can work with the combination of green infiltration and hydraulic modeling, and so they can achieve multiple results like cooler spaces, biodiversity improvement, stormwater control. In many cases, when in green corridors, we have stories of organizations that use these nature-based approaches also to protect the pavement, because if you put trees and shades in the pavement, you don't need to replace it so frequently. I think that's one aspect also to take into consideration. So it's cost, is biodiversity, is all that. And if we incorporate community knowledge on it, it's really key, because people will know better than a model where the water will be accumulated. They will know where the transport fails. They know, basically, they are aware of all these aspects that probably a model can fail with these mobility gaps, flooding points, with the heat points that you have there. If a model starts immediately collecting that information from public, and if you incorporate that information in your digital twin, in your model, then you avoid the rework, the redesign. The design review is it's a very common process and very laborious and costly for organizations. So people will allow you to reduce this this rework and save money again. So that's aspect. I also want to say that as we move forward, we can discuss if at the speed that we need, probably not. But as we move forward with more standards, with more compliance, with more pressure to go on nature-based solutions, we feel that if you can put all that in a geospatial, in a visual context, a way that you can bring all the opportunities to visualize all, you can better communicate for people. Decision makers will see the benefits, and they will increase trust, and they will increase confidence to make the decisions. And this is also good for citizens. If they see it in context, if they can see how things will go in 10 years, 20 years, I think we will go in the right direction. Also, as a cross-collaboration, technologies, when you put citizens, engineers, tech funders, communities, all with a shared visualization, with shared KPIs, with shared risks and shared opportunities, bringing all that together, I think there's digital technologies can make a very good step on that. But as I started, it's not the silver bullet. It has to be combined with the knowledge from people and with the care with nature, which by design should be all equally inputted there. So thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ariana Karamalis. I work for Build Change, and Build Change is a leader in resilient housing. We work on a systems change approach that is homeowner-driven to increase access to resilient housing across the global south for people living in informal housing. And so, you know, I think just to start, there are 2.8 billion people currently living in inadequate housing worldwide. So it's not an insignificant problem. And that number is like only set to increase, as well as the numbers of people requiring housing over the coming years as urbanization increases, especially in cities across Africa and Asia. So the scale of the problem is significant, and you know, I think that the implications could be quite negative for nature and climate, especially if not approached in a resilient way. So at Build Change, we really prioritize and preference retrofitting existing housing wherever possible. And you know, we've done some work, research that has shown that retrofitting existing informal housing to make it climate and disaster resilient where possible can save significant amounts of embodied carbon emissions. So the numbers are quite significant. It's about 4.8 gigatons of CO2 emissions globally, while at the same time improving the lives of, you know, over 268 million households. So there's some significant work that can be done there for people and climate. And you know, I think, as I said, we really try to use in all of our work a homeowner-driven approach. And not only, I think, a homeowner-driven approach, but really an approach that is community-based and localized. So wherever we work, you know, we try to work directly with the local workforce, construction workers, materials producers, and as well as the homeowners, to understand really what are the local conditions, what are the climate risks that they're facing, what are the construction practices and the building materials, you know, that make sense and that can be adapted to be more resilient. And so through all of these different ways, we can really, you know, speak to the climate needs, ensure that we're doing our work in a way that promotes climate adaptation as well as mitigation, you know, and also incorporating from the beginning of the process all the way through the community's experience, knowledge, and really building resilience on a community level, you know. And just very briefly, we've done some work recently in Colombia with Afro-descendant communities through a partnership with the Ministry of Housing there. We've trained local CBOs, and when I say trained, it's not really trained because they've trained us as well with their local knowledge. But we've worked with them to develop their capacity for resilient construction so that they themselves, the CBOs, can be the ones implementing Colombia's national housing program with the communities there. And this really enables, you know, the scaling of this kind of a localized approach across the country, which is the plan for that work. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. And could you then please go back to the audience seat, and then I would like to invite the. Okay. I would like to invite the second batch of the discussant speakers.
Great. Okay. So you see that this is a slightly unusual format, and so it's not a panel, but it's a quite dynamic conversation. We've got now a next round of speakers. Wait for next round. So we've got an empty chair here. So if someone from the previous speakers or future speakers or someone from the audience wants to engage with us, this is your opportunity to maybe just make yourself known and seen, and so we can invite you to contribute to this conversation. So now to the next round of speakers. We can start maybe Sanai with the first person, and then, please, if you feel that you should make a point that is relevant to the conversation, just, signal, and we will let you speak.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Arthur Bredo. I'm a civil engineer, and I'm a business development manager at TPF, and I'm also represent FEDEC here as the chair of the Future Leaders Advisory Council. And when it comes to, so I'll talk a little bit on the engineering side of that. So when it comes to co-design infrastructure, I'll try not to put here the principles, but some cases. And we have two very interesting cases here in Brazil. The first one is the Promodar program in Recife, which is a city in the northeast of the country. That has two main goals. The first one is integrated urbanization, and the second one is risk reduction against climate disasters. So for that, there's a big community involvement, especially when it comes to designing and defining what they want for that area. And once it is done, then the architects and engineers come in place to define all the technical solutions that really meet the people's interests. And the second example is the Cachimba project in Curitiba, in the south of the country, that has kind of the same objectives as the Promodar, but has a big housing component. So many houses have been built for the people in an entire neighborhood, and a large social work has been done to register the families and do the proper resettlement. And when it comes to nature, I feel it's important to bring nature-positive solutions. And FEDEC has two interesting publications on that were done by the SDC, the Sustainable Development Committee, one in 2023 and another one in 2024 that I invite you all to take a look. It's a very interesting reading with practical cases. And why should we care and what must change? I mean, we could think about the idealistic way. Okay, we're going to leave a good word for our children, grandchildren, but there's also the practical thinking that is environmental risk is financial risk. For infrastructure and a living threat for our lives now. And what must change? I'm not going to go further into that, but three quick points. The first one is to promote more sustainable procurement with quality and quality cost-based selections. The second one is to do the carbon management throughout the entire life cycle of the project, and the FIDIC carbon management framework can help a lot in that. And the third point is to change people's mindset, because at the end, we are the end users. So when we start buying our apartments, for instance, on the basis of embodied and operational carbon, I feel that we can really do a change in the market when we do the changes in ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very insightful comment. And so I would like to invite the next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here today. My name is Ilya Azaroff. I am the incoming president for the American Institute of Architects, and I'm also an architect, and I run a practice called Plus Lab. We work with a lot of frontline communities across the world. So I love the questions here today. The first and foremost of why we have to do this. Last year alone, 120 million people were displaced around the world from natural and man-made disasters. That means the work that we all collectively do is inadequate. To change that, we have to do something completely radically different. We have to understand the difference between healing and curing. Healing is a holistic approach that repairs the earth and repairs culture, repairs society with every act we take. Curing is removing a symptom. It's flooding. Build a wall. That is not the way forward. And how do we do that? Well, if we think about what Antonio Guterres said, to stop the spiral, we need to go through disaster risk reduction to achieve our SDGs. Our first order of business is to work collectively to stop that spiral, stop those 120 million people from being displaced through extraordinary collaborative co-design work. If we don't do that, by 2050, it's 220 million people displaced on an annual basis. We cannot sustain that. So how do we do that? We need to decolonize the design process. Here at COP, I sit in a lot of these amazing roundtables and discussions and says, let's make a place for indigenous knowledge. No, wrong. In my work, it's been just the exact opposite. Indigenous people should be setting the table, inviting us to learn from them. My office alone has learned from 10,000 years of experience, and we continue to learn in putting together infrastructure projects that not only repair the earth, but they regenerate. They regenerate the earth, increasing carrying capacity, understanding that culture, jobs, people staying in place is at the heart of that. So my 2 cents to this is that we have had it a little bit wrong all the way along. And when we bring indigenous people to the table, they understand place, culture, and the response to the issues that they face. If we do our job well, we listen and translate what that is into marrying indigenous knowledge with modern technologies to get ourselves moving the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilya. That was really nice, nicely woven, and the indigenous knowledge, technology. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Stella Ndiwa. I'm an environmentalist, a climate change expert from Kenya. I work with Kenya Railways. We construct and operate railways. This topic is very important to us, and we have experience firsthand. I'll tell you a story. One day we started a plan to construct a 468 kilometers of railway through a 120 national park, through a community that is diverse. So what our engineers did is provide a plan, provide a design, and go on ground to construct. And the first day they hit the ground, it was a demonstration everywhere. Because community don't understand their plan. Elephants did not understand their plan. The plan itself and the design did not have sufficient animal crossings, did not have crossing underpasses or overpasses for human being or land use that has changed, passes through agricultural land. So they went back to the drawing board that we need to understand and incorporate the knowledge from the community, the more knowledge from the people who are mandated to handle the wildlife corridors where they pass it. And that's why it's very important at the onset, not even at the design. When you have a plan, when you're doing your feasibility study, how do you incorporate all this knowledge on board? And it's not just indigenous knowledge. It's community knowledge. You know, people move from one place to another. So they'll find indigenous knowledge, there's community knowledge there, and you need to incorporate that in the design. We need co-planners, we need co-designs, we need co-implementers, and we need co-monitoring. Because how do community own a project? Because if you construct and leave, they will not own that project. Actually, they will not protect that project. So you need ownership, not only as implementer, but also the community that construct that. And in Kenya, we have one participatory tool called Kesho Scenario Planning. Kesho in Swahili means tomorrow. So you sit down at the onset, understand with the community. You do stakeholder mapping. You do stakeholder analysis. Have a sit down with them. They have experience from the past. They will develop a pathways on scenarios they want. So you as an engineer, you as a technical person will help them tabulate in graphs and maps what they want. And they'll choose this is what we want. This is the pathway that we want. Back in 2018, we had a very bad El Nino, and our railway corridor was passing through. And when the rain rained at night, when we wake up, the entire section is swept away. It killed over 48 people, and our infrastructure was swept away. So what does it mean? How do we incorporate the knowledge of the people into our design so that this design is resilient? because it's very costly if you design without the community. It will cost you. It will be they will resist the project. All we want is design a project that you go on with the community. They will actually protect the project for you and will reduce the cost. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm Stuart Cannon. I work for PIDG, or PIDG, so I'm going to try and give the perspective of an investor. And I think I'd like to sort of build on some of the things that my peer was saying around looking at this idea of what happens after construction, what happens after you've delivered a piece of infrastructure. I think a lot, and rightly so, a lot of work is put into the upfront, engaging with communities, looking at the design, doing climate change risk assessment, really trying to understand what your impacts and dependencies are. But often I find there's so much upfront focus, there's a lack of thinking that looks at how effective it is in practice at delivering what you're trying to achieve. So at PIDG, we try and really focus on that evaluative part of the infrastructure. We're measured by both our impact and financial returns. Obviously, we have a keen focus on making sure that we are getting our money back after we've invested in something, but also trying to make sure that the impact that we expected is realized in practice. So this is doing end user surveys, going out into communities, really trying to understand if what we intended to achieve has been achieved in practice. And it can be really revealing at times where you don't necessarily expect a certain impact to be realized, or sometimes there are adverse impacts that you weren't necessarily expecting. And I think it's really helpful to have this view and this feedback loop into future investments and the design process. And I think this is an area that's definitely needed on scaling up nature-based solutions. Like we try and look at these opportunities, but a lot of it is lacking in the evidence base and the data. So the more we can, more we can implement these solutions, we can prove that they deliver what they're expected to achieve, how they can deliver benefits for communities. It then makes it easier to be able to roll those out in future. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Last, and then we come back.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Bruce Zhong. I'm from Arab, representing the Climate and Sustainability Group in Asia Pacific. I work mostly in East and Southeast Asia, and the previous panel speakers, I think some of them, they mentioned about the importance of data, like from Benny and the satellite images, etc., etc. Now, from my experiences with, the consultation with different government people, we observed that there are a lot of applications already been done, for different sakes by using data, from BIM to GIS to satellite images, all things, and IoT as well. Now, the problem or the issue is about the silo of different applications being developed. Some developers or some consultants like us, develop nature-based solution. Another one develop resilience solution. Another one, to carbon neutrality solution. There are different apps. There are different applications being developed by different companies, which sometimes using some open source approach, sometimes using some sort of proprietary approach, the software basically proprietary based, right? Now, so this is the issue. Now, in the past 5 to 10 years, we have several exercises with different, from advanced government, so I mean those developed governments like Singapore, like Hong Kong, to some ADB, AIIB project in more like developing countries. We are building up not us, but just we try to advocate sort of a common spatial data infrastructure. Now, given the time is very short, but I just would like to mention the importance of it because number one, it needs to be end user oriented. Now, just build a platform is not enough, but try to interlink with the end users. They feedback what formats, what kind of data, to what resolution of satellite image or BIM is sufficient for them to build the development of application. So it links up to academia, researcher, consultant, government, different departments, etc., etc. So number one, user end oriented. Number two, back to the point I just mentioned, needs to be open source, right? From data level, we need to have a harmonization between data standard, right? From BIM, GIS to IoT. Otherwise, it not be interoperable. It can't be like that, right? We need to be interoperable. We can't just, build part by part. So now this is the prerequisite of a successful platform sharing, not only in advanced or developed place, but now we are moving towards this direction in order to help the community as well as not only down to the end user, but also the developers, academia, government, as well as the petitioner, right?
Thank you so much. So may I invite the people who have already spoken to take a seat, please? But if you want to come in, stay close to the stage because, you know, if you want to come in, please come in. And then invite Alice. So, okay, so we got you three to provide more of your remarks, so that's great. And then we welcome, so Alicia Amorim, so Program Director for COP30, and she's joined us and she will provide closing remarks. But please feel free, if you want to come in at any point, you know, like please free to come in and we will make space for you. So over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lamis El Khatib. I'm the youth representative here. I work for the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition as a research coordinator, and also I have another role with the International Society for Environment for City and Regional Planners as a resilience planning expert. I connect policies to on-ground projects. So for me, like, how do we co-design infrastructure in communities and nature? I believe, as all the panelists said, that we need to shift who we see as experts, especially as Talia said, that we need to include indigenous knowledge from the very beginning in the first consultations, not at the ends as add-ons. So at the LUIC, for example, we have a grant-making council to support people on ground and communities and work with the young people to provide the financial support for them. So, for example, we had a lot of young people from the Global North and Global South all around the world. We provide fund for them to implement their projects on ground. And for that, for the first day at COP, for example, we had the launching of the Barbados implementation modalities, which was a very important thing to happen for young people and indigenous communities, because now they have the means of implementation to implement their projects on ground, and we support and welcome this launching. And we are looking forward also to make sure that the guidance on the fund for responding to loss and damage has the accessibility for those communities to be funded immediately after a disaster hits. And for infrastructure, since 75% of the infrastructure for 2050 is not built yet, we need to make sure that we involve indigenous community and people and young people in the design from the very beginning, so that we innovate and we make infrastructure that actually serve the communities and the people that we are designing for as planners. Thank you.
Just quickly before so from the people at the audience, if you would like to follow up some point all the speakers mentioned, or if you have something to share you would like to share, please come to the seat in the front. Thank you.
Don't be ashamed. Yeah, please. Yeah. Come here.
How can really the governments be interested? I think, yeah, if you have national policies, definitely. But national policies on adaptation aren't really doing anything. You don't have any policies. And so I think it's not fair only to wait, but how can cities at the local level start doing this is the key question. And so in our experience, cities are interested because unfortunately, they don't consider the informal people as citizens. And the very common argument when you go to cities in terms of constructing infrastructure with nature-based solutions is, oh, but we have to look at the entire city. So the point is, how do you have to, sort of educate them that this will also benefit the entire city. That's the first question. The second is, if it will start generating revenue for them, then probably, they will get interested, because the second-tier cities in countries, mostly in developing countries, are really short of revenue to do anything. Thirdly, again, if you start getting national level recognition and if you are able to influence policies as an early driver in the city, then, it gets interested and sustained along with the community. So, for example, the city where we were working was doing a sewage treatment plant, which we had actually helped them prepare a project report. And then we converted into how could it, treat the water and turn it into a lake. And for turning into a lake and then beautify the whole area to increase the biodiversity, so which all the other citizens could also use as a garden, and the communities were involved. So I think that's what then caught their interest. So at least for the vulnerable communities, while we start voicing, we also have to stress the fact that it's going to benefit the entire city. And that's how you really try and build partnerships to make nature-based infrastructure work.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel. Yes,
Thank
of
you.
course.
Thank you. My name is Emmanuel Escoto. I work for ASTM International. I'm happy to be here today because actually we bring solutions to almost all the problems and challenges we have been mentioning today. Let me start and call to Talia. We welcome everyone to our table. We welcome indigenous people. We welcome communities to come to sit to our technical tables and discuss about the standards that we are creating, to have your input. We have memorandum of understanding with 127 countries. They have access to our standards for free. They have access to capacity building for free, and they can join as well our technical tables. We welcome everyone. So please, after this session, come to me. I have a QR code for some memberships for you, and thank you for that already. Talking about students, we have students chapters, students membership. We have emerging professional programs that we support their development and understanding on how to implement this standard and give back to the communities. We are member of the UNDRR and ARISE, and we develop a platform, a database platform with 700 standards that are contributing to adaptation and resilience, and that is an open platform. So ASTM provide also a platform where more than 34,000 volunteers, scientific and business professionals, and people from the communities come directly to discuss on these solutions. And we want to put these solutions to the people where the most needed. So that's why we have that memorandum of understanding, and that's why we are working with so many countries already. And I have so many points that almost touching with everyone, but I'm going to keep it short because I also want to highlight some of the standards that we have. We have a community, technical committee dedicated to climate and community, working on resilient planning and strategy for water resources, for planning for resources as well. We have natural-based solutions. We are working on some guides for natural-based solutions for urban heat and inland flood mitigation. So I will invite everyone to review the standards that we have because there are already some that are contributing to housing already. I believe you are probably using some of our standards as well. And I have been meeting so many people, and that's what we do. We create these collaborations, these partnerships, and the most important for us is to help the world work better through the power of standardization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alice? Of course.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this table, in this fishbowl, which is my favorite format of an activity. I think the more participative any process we can make, the better. I'm Alice Piva. I work for Conservation International, coordinating the Global Great Community of Practice, which is a network, a hub of people who share this mission of mainstreaming and upscaling, building and designing with nature for creating resilience. And we do that because we know that many of cases, nature-based solutions are ideal for building resilience in terms of co-benefits, cost-effectiveness, and also mitigation properties. But often, especially in urban scenarios, they are not enough, right? Because we don't have sufficient space for nature there, or the nature that exists there is too fragile to properly hold those resilience benefits. And there is also the issue of time, right? I come from Brazil, from the northeast of Brazil, and here we have many communities who are always under the risk of losing their lives in the next heavy rainfall due to landslides or flooding. And this happens often, and we cannot say to these communities, oh, you will be protected in 20 years when this flowers in this mangrove that we are planting here will start to thrive and then be able to hold this amount of land that's right above your head. So this is why we really think that green gray infrastructure, this assemblage of techniques of engineered infrastructure systems with land and ecosystems conservation and restoration tends often to be the most cost-effective and the best of both worlds, basically. I know that for some conservationists, they tend to not enjoy having to put a little bit of cement and concrete, but when we understand that this is needed to save lives, I think this process gets, we can get a little bit more of the appeal of this process. And I'm also champion of the Escazú Agreement, which is a treaty specific for Latin America and the Caribbean around human rights and environmental matters. It basically seeks to strengthen environmental democracy here in Latin America because we are a region full of environmental troubles, environmental disputes, we can say it, right? We don't have in many regions a strong enough presence of the state that is able to mediate environmental conflicts. So this is why we have many of those. And we often have decision-making processes regarding the environment that are pretty unfair because they don't listen to the communities. And Escazú is the nickname, right, of this treaty. And I'm sharing a little bit about it because I think it provides a very good roadmap on how can we engage or should we be engaging communities, and a little bit more of a snippet on the problems that we usually face as designers and engineers when we're trying to do that in our projects. So again, Escazú is a nickname for the regional treaty on access to information, public participation, and justice in environmental matters in Latin America and the Caribbean. And it starts like this. It's basically a brainchild of the Rio Declaration of '92 that says that for every the best way of making decisions about the environment, and this obviously includes the urban environment, is to make sure that everybody has the right to participate on it on the scale that corresponds to their role, but has the right to be there. And how you do it in a qualified manner, right? Because I know that for many of us who are designers, urban planners, we tried to hold some sort of participatory process, and we faced many issues. We had immense headaches due to that. And I see that this often happens because we don't do the first step, which is securing that people that we are inviting to the table with us have the proper access to the information that it takes for them to participate with quality, right? And this is often a clash because everybody wants representation, right? We all want indigenous people, women-led communities, black people sitting with us and co-designing it, but we are not often willing to lose a little bit of the control, right, that we are granted when we are making this decision by ourselves or with a close-knit and selected group of stakeholders. We always attach really hard to our key performance indicators and our tight deadlines, and we usually don't take the time to build the understanding within the communities that we are working with of what is happening there, right? And and there are of course many exclusionary and, to be frankly, racist approaches that we often incur, which is thinking, oh, but they won't understand that, right? And we forget that it's our responsibility to communicate what we're trying to do in a way that they can understand, right? It starts with a one-on-one, but you can build up from there, and you should build up from there. Otherwise, we'll be perpetuating exclusion. And I think that this is something that's not often talked about, right? If you want to have quality participation, if you want to have a really just process of decision-making, you need first to start with proper access to information, with proper education from the community that you're working with.
So we were joined by two more speakers returning to the stage, and they wanted to make a comment, and then we will allow for closing comments. So starting with you, Stella.
Okay. I think one of the things that we appreciate is community already have mapped climate risks. That's something we ignore. Way before GIS came, way before technology came, community knew and have mapped climate risk. And that's one thing that we need to embrace. The second thing is nature is an engineer too. So if you block with an embankment, it will find a way through your infrastructure. And those two key things are the reason why at the onset, at the feasibility and plan, we should embrace knowledge from the community and also incorporate nature aspect in our planning. What things we miss from experience in our place is we focus in environmental and social safeguard instruments. So we run to do EIAs, we run to do relocation action plan way after design has been made, way after decision has been made. And that is where the mistake is. So we should, from the onset, learn that community have already mapped and nature is an engineer.
Yeah. Okay. Oops. This is. Okay. I would say taking the last that was said. It's true, but it's also true that now, and this is strikes my head because I heard this 2 days ago. There are more people with a cell phone and with a smartphone than people with 24-hour service water supply. So we should take advantage of the democratization of the technologies for people to do what we need to do with nature-based solutions and all that, right? So, and I want to mention, Bruce, you were talking about the open source. I feel when these models work, we should incentivize them, but we also need to be aware that there needs to be funding. You know, the open source, someone needs to code, right? I also don't expect companies to provide services for free. They will need to get paid, and software development companies also need to get funding to keep developing the work in a consistent way. But what is really key for me, I heard someone saying that free speech is not free beer, right? So I think we need to have a free speech. We need to find ways to communicate with open standards. The standards should be open and they should align with the standards as much as possible. If we can have open source models that can be funded, great. We should work with them and we should incentivize them. But I think open standards are really key, particularly for visualization. That's why we also have Cesium, that is being basically a standard for 3D view that Google uses, which is a great tool. If you go to Google Street View or Google 3D Maps, you're using Cesium, which is an open standard, which is used by global companies, but also by startups and a community of 200,000 developers. So I think that will be my last takes. Finally, in just 30 seconds, I do believe that we should also take advantage of technologies to ensure that we put everything in context in a way that we compare the benefits of what we can do with nature-based solutions versus what will happen if we don't do it.
Well, very nicely made. I'll just take a small segue and give you 5 keywords which we can take home. Scale. I think for scale is important, local to sub-regional to national. It requires a planning and dialogue, exactly what you are doing here. Sector. I mean, what's your functionality? Are you doing water treatment, flood protection, storm management? So the multifunctional systems that you want to design and you want to see that they serve that purpose. Third is risk assessment. You can do nature-based solutions, co-creation, where the risk is low. Maybe starting with peri-urban areas where there is less people, and then maybe slowly transitioning to heavy populated areas. Because risk assessment is fundamental for a policymaker to take a decision. The liability aspects comes in. And then financing. Are we spreading the financing across the sectors and commitments? The Paris Agreement, but also the Sendai framework, and also other SDGs. So I think we can use these points as levers to take our documents, our thinking, our discussion to action. And maybe we can make a magic formula that works in your own context, in your country, community, or maybe learn from each other how to make it work.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to comment on the open standards. We may not have, we don't have standards that are open, but through the MOU program that we have, the countries itself can make the standards their own. We always say, don't give fish, show the people how to fish. Our communities, our indigenous people already know how to fish, and that's why we bring them to the tables to bring their contribution and have their knowledge put in the standards. And what we do is that we train them on developing their own standards as well at their national levels. We do capacity building opportunity, and by participating in the technical committees, they get to network and engage with many people that are scientific and business professionals. Thank you.
Thank you. So over to Alicia to just close our session, and thank you for coming and joining us today.
Sure. Thank you so much for such an engaging and interesting conversation, because this diversity of perspective is exactly what we need to advance more on solutions and actions to implement resilience and adaptation measures. As part of our COP30 presidency vision, we have been trying to convey very explicitly that the regime, the COPs, all the ecosystem of climate should be treating or dealing with resilience building and adaptation in a different level. If we have been following the COPs in the past 10 years or so, adaptation has always been not sidelined, but gaining much less attention, both in terms of financial resources, but even in terms of the spaces of the COPs. And we feel we need to change that. We need to change that because science is telling us. We need to change that because communities are telling us. We need to change that because mayors, subnationals, financial sector players, everybody seems to understand that we need to mainstream or to make resilience building the new normal for everything. Domestic and international resources, public and private resources, all public policies should actually contribute to building resilience. And this is what the action agenda of this COP is trying to do, to bring different stakeholders and different sorts of knowledges, because that's also something very unique and very different, right, from the mitigation and adaptation conversation. When you talk about tons of carbon, it's tons of carbon everywhere, and you may have one solution that can be replicated easily from one territory to the other. When you're talking about resilience building, it's not the same. We can have we could try to standardize nature-based solutions. We can try to standardize different methods. But in the end of the day, building resilience, it's about how different communities can address the challenges that they are facing. What we see ahead of us, and my provocation maybe to all of you looking ahead throughout the next year, is how can we keep this ball rolling in terms of bringing that momentum towards resilience building, to bring those solutions on board. I think we do have an opportunity to have such an engaged presidency and committed to this topic, to use the climate weeks, all the different moments that we have, not only at COP, but to continue building that momentum and actually putting us more on the solution side of things. We need to work with urgency, but we need also to work in a systematic way. And this means seizing all the opportunities that we have, both international and domestic, to actually keep bringing this conversation forward and actually putting on the table the 2-3 things that will take us from the diagnosis to action. I have heard many ideas here, and we stand ready to support, to engage, and to bring this social participation and non-state actor participation as lively as we can to the COP process, not on just this moment, but on a more systematic moment, or in a more systematic way, in how the system should work. So it shouldn't be more a party-led process only, COPs, that we need a consensus of 198 parties. We need to make the system work for those who are bringing the solutions on the ground, and we are ready to think how. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alice, COP30 Program Director. Thank you for the closing remarks. And thank you very much also for all the participants and the panelists and the speakers for sharing your very strong, inspiring insights. And we are closing this session now, but we would like you to come to the front, and we'd like to take a picture together. Obrigado.